And what has really been forefront of my mind lately is recently what has gone down with the Rhizome and the eviction of the Rhizome from its space by the city of Austin, and all of the everything that's come as a result of that. City mandated eviction as a consequence of the fact that we were doing a lot of unpermitted construction over a long period of time. The base lesson of this is, I think, that things need to be done to the law to prevent that from happening, because you can think that you can get away with it for a long time, but eventually it's going to come around and bite you in the tail. Everything in hindsight is 2020, but we should have done things by the book to make it happen. There's just the time frame that the city gave us, they just came down on us so hard to prevent us from being able to pull the permits. Then also, I guess, the question of ownership, transfer of ownership, which is something that we began to discuss in about a little more than the last year of the warehouse and that whole process, which we really barely got into. The end of 2000, about spring of 2008, there was a group that was seriously interested in purchasing this base from us, which is something that we had on the table from the beginning. That effort fell apart largely due to a lack of interest, a lack of what is called an energized core. Most of the people in the space just didn't have the energy to make it happen, or the desire to make it happen. But it was, ideally that's how it would have gone down. And ideally the space would have been established as a land trust, which effectively would have taken it out of the market, out of speculation, and kept its value down. And I think creating land trusts is a good way for communities to combat gentrification and of creating a pretty genuinely egalitarian structure for a piece of property. I wish that it had happened like that, and that it didn't happen like the way it did, which was the city, the eviction happening and putting so much pressure on us that Stacy and I had our hands tied, and we ran out of options, and we're put in a position where we had to sell the building in order to avoid paying exorbitant fines and facing criminal charges. A lot of people were really unhappy with us for doing that. Not that many people. I think most people understood, but there were some people who were really angry at us for it. And the thing is, when you have two people who own the building, and they're going to be the ones who ultimately have the legal responsibility of dealing with that space. They're going to be the ones holding the bags. They're going to be the ones facing criminal charges and getting fined. That part of egalitarian ownership is that that responsibility, that legal responsibility, is shared among more people as well. So it doesn't put one individual or two individuals in that position where they are forced to make that decision and then be resented for it as well, which is just really unfortunate. Basically we built a whole second story on top of the residential building without ever pulling a permit for it.
On top of
We had one of the buildings. Basically the building, they sort of formed a horseshoe. There were three buildings, and one of them was a residential building, had a flat roof, which is the stupidest design in the world. A lot of buildings have flat roofs, but it's basically building a swimming pool on top of a building with drainage holes. But those drainage holes can, of course, clog. When we first got the building, it leaked in a million places. People were getting electrocuted in the kitchen. When it would rain, everybody's room was getting rained on. It was miserable. We had to throw up some sort of structure really quickly a sloped roof that would shed the rain. Mm-hmm. So we did. And nobody said anything. We got away with it. We built, people build non-permitted construction all the time. It happens all the time. We just happened to build a lot of it, way more than most people did. This second story. So then we built another section that was, made bedrooms on it, and then a third section with even more rooms. And had inspectors come through. Nobody said anything. We would build it in the summer when the leaves are out, so people couldn't see us doing it. And quickly made it look like it was finished, and there was nothing on record that said, no way for anybody to prove that it hadn't always been there. And that's the thing. I think one of the things is the turnover of code inspectors in Austin was fairly high, so it's not like the same individual would come back year to year. It would be somebody else, so they couldn't really remember what had been there before. So that allowed us to build the second story, and that was huge, because in order to have gotten that permitted, we would have had to bring in an engineer who would have to talk to the builder to verify that it was structurally all sound, which it was, but they'd probably want to take everything down to be able to verify that. Another thing is, this is an old building. It's a 1952 building. A lot of old wiring, old plumbing. When you buy the building, that stuff gets grandfathered in. And if you do any modification to it, if you add any new wiring, any new plumbing, that basically throws out the grandfather. And then now you have to redo all the plumbing, redo all the wiring, basically bring a 1952 building up to 2009 code, which is extraordinarily expensive. The other thing is, there was no clear exit plan. The code violations were extremely non-specific. It was like electrical, plumbing, structure, fix, not fix this, fix this, fix this. Up to the discretion of individual plumbers or electricians or structural engineers to determine what needed to get fixed. So there was no clear exit plan. And the city made it really clear to us they were going to drag a comb across it before they signed off on all of it, before they allowed anything to happen there. And there was no way we were going to have that many people ever be able to live there again. Legally, we were only allowed to have 5 people live there. And most cities have laws that say no more than 5 unrelated people can live under one roof, which is a big obstacle to doing any sort of collective cooperative housing in cities, unless they're zoned as a dormitory. Those laws actually exist to prevent brothels in most places. But that was the biggest income earner that the collective had. And there was no way we were going to have 12 people live there again. That was the biggest game we played. Every time the inspectors would come, we'd have to run through the building. We'd have to first lie and say, oh no, we're having a naked yoga class going inside. You can't come in the building right now, We'd make a date for them to come back. We'd take out mattresses from all the rooms to make it look like there were just 5 bedrooms. We just, that's a game we always played. It worked. But we weren't going to get away with that again. The amount of scrutiny that we're under. And then they said to make the building residential, we were going to have to install central heating and cooling. That was going to be like thousands and thousands of dollars to do that. I mean, and as told to us by anarchist contractors and carpenters, they're like, look, you got a black hole here of cost, of money. There's no clear exit plan. The best strategy for anybody buying this place is that they're going to come in and they're going to strip it down to the studs. They're going to turn this back into a commercial building and just use it for basic commercial processes. There was a lot of people who were mad at us who felt that they had put in a lot of work and sweat equity into the building over the years, which is true. A lot of people did an enormous amount of work on the building. But the thing is, we never did anything to increase the value of the building. We never fixed the floor, we never fixed the ceiling, did anything like that. We made little partitions that were great for our purposes at the time, for having a Books for Prisoners project or a radio station. But all those little partitions were the things that got us in trouble, because they were never permitted and they were never approved. And anybody buying the building was going to tear those down because they were illegal structures, and they actually devalued the building considerably. So that was also a really tricky thing also.